This is a Feldenkrais lesson taught by Ben Parsons. As you're exercising by yourself at home, then make sure that you look after your own comfort and well-being. That means that if a movement is strenuous, painful, or causes any sort of stress for you, then reduce it or avoid it. You're welcome to take a pause, to miss a movement out, also to reduce the frequency, the speed, the size of the movements that you do so that it becomes comfortable for yourself. Enjoy the lesson. Please lie on your back. And pay attention to the arms, the hands, the elbows.
I can't hear you now.
Okay, I'll stop my video and just carry on with audio. Is that better for you? Pay attention to your arms, to your elbows, your hands, your wrists. And how they're lying on the floor. Does it feel as if one hand is more turned inwards or outwards, that your hands are lying differently, so that the palm of one hand is more backwards or more forwards? Does it feel as if your elbows are lying so that one has a bony resting place on the floor, which is different, more turned in or out, or perhaps wider from your body, further away? Is there a sense in the armpits of more space on one side and less space on the other? Do the two shoulders lie equally distant from the earlobe? Or is one shoulder closer to the earlobe on one side? Or is a shoulder less in contact with the floor, more towards the ceiling? And what do you feel? Do you feel closeness to the ceiling, or do you feel a difference in contact behind with the floor? Your inhalation. Does your inhalation move the ribs at the top of the rib cage forwards and upwards? Does the inhalation happen in the belly instead, or in the flanks, or between the back and the floor? Where do you feel movement? And gently roll your head to the right and feel how smooth the movement may or may not be, and how far the head rolls and how close to the ear the contact with the floor comes. And roll your heads gently once or twice to the other side and compare the same things. And then leave that and roll over and lie on your belly. With your face to the left, your left hands and arm bent upwards in front of your face, lying on the floor, your left knee bent and out to the side, and your right arm downwards towards the back of the body. And in this position, lift your left hand, just the left hand, away from the floor and put the left hand back on the floor. This means that your wrist is staying on the floor and that you're bending your hand at the wrist so that your fingers and hands move to point upwards towards the ceiling whilst the wrist and forearm remain on the floor. And the speed and distance are your choice. You do the movement at the speed which allows you to be comfortable and to avoid fatigue. But principally the speed that allows your body to sense the nature in which you make the movement. With a slow attentive movement, you'll be able to tell if the action is taking place in your forearm only, or if your shoulder or chest or breathing or jaw or face or other parts of your body engage and activate in order to facilitate the movement of the hand. Do the movement as simply as possible, and simple means comfortable and efficient. Simple, comfortable and efficient are three ways of describing an action. Just take a pause. And then come back once more, and this time, keeping the wrist on the floor, lift the elbow away from the floor several times. So now there's a question, which is, lift the elbow away. What is lifting, or more to the point, how high is lifting? A lift could be the minimum, it could be the maximum, or anywhere in between. Make the movement of a size such that you can feel the very first instances of activation in your body, in your shoulder. Do you feel that your shoulder tenses and lifts to the ceiling to pull the elbow after it? Do you feel that the shoulder slips towards the ear and towards the floor in order to make space for the elbow? There are different things that the shoulder can do in order to permit the elbow to move. Let it be. Rest a moment. And this time, keeping the wrist on the floor, lift your hands off the floor once and bring it back. And then lift your elbow off the floor once and bring it back. And repeat the movement. Which of these two movements is simpler and more comfortable? And can you make them both as simple and comfortable as the most comfortable of the two? And as you lift your hand, you can sense that the back of the hand is forming an angle with the wrist. And this angle, as you lift the hand, is it the same as the angle in the wrist when you lift the elbow? It doesn't have to be the same. Just sense in comparison. Let it go, take a rest. And very gently come to the other side. So you switch your hands around, gently turn your heads, bring your right knee higher up in order to create more space for the front of your body. And feel how it is to lie on this side in comparison. And here, lift your hands away from the floor, leaving the wrist on the floor, forming an angle at the back of the wrist. Compare this side with the other side. Is it strenuous or less strenuous? And can you translate an idea of strain or strenuousness into an idea of simplicity and efficiency in the movement? Wherein lies the difference on this side from the other side, if you feel a difference? Leave that for a second. And then lift your elbow from the floor, leaving the wrist on the floor, and compare this side with the other side. Your very first movement, was it spontaneous and logical, or did it present a challenge for your body? In order for your elbow to lift, does the shoulder retract and move away towards the ceiling, towards your left side? Or does the shoulder slip towards your chin and the floor forwards in order to allow the elbow to go backwards? Let that be. Have a pause. And now lift the elbow and the hand simultaneously from the floor. Is the movement harder than simply lifting the elbow by itself? And if so, then you can consider that the difficulty comes about because you've added a hand. So what is it about the hands, the movement of the hand, that might make the lifting of the elbow and the hands simultaneously more challenging than the lifting of the elbow simply by itself? Do you have as much support through the wrist as you did through the hand? Or does it have to do with the shoulder? Or is the movement just as easy in this way as it was before? And can you lift elbow and hands both in a similar way? That means more or less to the same extent, the same amount. So that as much as the hand lifts, the elbow lifts, and as much as the elbow lifts, the hand lifts. Let that go, rest for a moment. And now lift the hand and the elbow at the same time and stay there. And with the hand and the elbow lifted, rock on the wrist so that the palm touches to the floor and the elbow comes higher. And then rock on the wrist so that the elbow touches down to the floor, but the palm lifts higher away from the floor. So fix the angle of the wrist behind and rock over the wrist, maintaining the angle uniform no matter what position the elbow and the hand find themselves in. And feel that as the elbow goes down, the shoulder moves with it somehow away from the ear. And as the elbow goes up, the shoulder slides in the direction of the head or in the direction of the chin. Reduce the effort. And let that go, roll onto the back and rest. And feel the two shoulders on the floor now, the difference left and right. Make a comparison with the start of the lesson. How do the wrists lie? How do the hands, the elbows lie on the floor? And then come once more to the first side, so you lie on your stomach, your left hand in front of the face, your left knee bent with the leg drawn upwards. And how is it now to lie on this side? Is it different to how it was at the very first instance? And lift your hand away from the floor and bring your hand back to the floor. And now lift your elbow away from the floor and bring it back. And then lift both your hands and your elbow at the same time. But now keep the hand and the elbow lifted away from the floor and rock over the wrist so that your hand touches to the floor once, the elbow rises higher, and the elbow touches to the floor and the hand rises higher. But notice that as the elbow touches to the floor, the shoulder is pulled away from the ear, down the back, just a few millimeters. And as the elbow rises into the air, the shoulder can slide like a fried egg over the rib cage in the direction of the chin, in the direction of the floor. How is the movement felt in your neck? How is it felt in your head? In your breathing? In the lower back and the pelvic area? And let that be. Roll onto your back and rest. And lift both hands away from the floor, leaving the wrists on the floor, and sense what is the nature of the angle in the wrist. Is the wrist moving here in the same way as it did when you were lying on your belly? And how do the two wrists move relative to each other? Does one wrist have more range of motion, the other less? And then leave the fingertips on the floor, but lift the wrist a little bit away from the floor so that the fingertips scrape a little bit on the floor. As the wrist lifts away, some space appears underneath the wrist joint. Not too much, just a little bit, and then you bring the wrist back towards the floor. So here the wrist is bending forwards, whereas before it bent backwards. And leave that. And once more roll onto your belly. With your face to the left knee drawn up in front. The left knee drawn up in front, your face to the left. So at the moment you're lying with your face to the right and the right knee drawn up. So the right hand is in front of your face, and then bring the left arm also up so that the palms, both palms are lying on the floor. And then in this position, with both elbows bent, both palms lying on the floor, one in front of the face, one behind the head, with your right knee bent and drawn up, then you can lift both hands simultaneously away from the floor, leaving the wrists in contact with the floor. And then a couple of times lift both elbows away from the floor. So in lifting the elbows, how do they lift differently? The front elbow and the back elbow. Is there a difference in the shoulders? Is there a difference in the pressure that each hand wants to exert on the floor? And then very gently swap the legs over, slowly turn the head in the other direction, and feel how you can flow from one side to the other. And stay there on the other side with your left knee drawn up, both hands up at the head level, and lift the hands simultaneously away from the floor. Simultaneously allow both elbows to lift away from the floor. And how does your front shoulder and your back shoulder compare? Do you feel the shoulder blades on your back like fried eggs? Thin and smooth, slipping here, slipping there. And then leave it and rest for a moment on a side of your choice, with the face turned in one direction or in the other. And now lift both hands once or twice, and then both elbows once or twice. And then simultaneously lift the hands and the elbows so that just the wrists remain on the floor. The elbows simultaneously with the hands lift away from the floor. And then stay with the elbows and hands lifted and rock on the wrist so that the hands move towards the floor, the elbows lift a bit, and the elbows move towards the floor and the hands lift a bit. And leave that, rest for a moment. And again, bring the hands and the elbows into the air with just the wrists resting on the floor. And in this position, allow one elbow to move down towards the floor, whilst the other elbow moves further up towards the ceiling, so that hand comes towards the floor. So one hand will touch whilst one hand lifts, and one elbow will lift while one elbow touches. And imagine that you're walking or on all fours. There's a movement, an alternate movement when you walk through one hip and then through the other, or with an animal through the shoulders, one shoulder and the other. So here, feel the movement of one of your shoulders here whilst your other shoulder moves there, and vice versa. As you do so, feel the shoulder blades sliding. One shoulder blade slides here, upwards. The other shoulder blade slides there, downwards. Then you also feel that your face just rocks gently or rolls a little bit on the floor. The point of pressure moves more towards the ear, more towards the nose. And leave that rest for a moment. And bring your knee on the other side up, turn your face to the other side. And lift simultaneously the two hands, the two elbows. And as you bring one hand down, the other hand goes up. As you bring one elbow up, the other elbow goes down. And do it so that the body, the bit of you that exists between the shoulders, is also integrated in the movement. Your arm bones are connected to your shoulder blades. The shoulder blades touch the collarbones, which touch the spine, which span across from right to left and left to right, which pull gently on your neck to roll your heads a little bit here, a little bit there. Let it go. Roll onto your back. And how do you feel your shoulders now on the floor? How broad across your back do you feel? Stand your feet. And then lift your wrists from the floor so that the fingertips remain on the floor but are dragged gently towards you, and lower your wrists back down. And how can you lift your wrists in this way as if there's a single thread of cotton on each wrist, pulling it up and lowering it down? Or even the thread of a spider, as if the wrists were supported underneath by an air balloon that was gently inflating and deflating. What does it mean for your elbows to allow the wrists to lift lightly? And what does it mean for your shoulders? And leave that. And allow the wrists to bend. Allow the elbows to bend so that the forearms stands vertically in the direction of the ceiling, with the hands hanging down, soft in the wrist, all tension gone from the fingers. And then rotate the forearms so that the hands turn a bit like a prairie dog surveying the savannah. And let the hands come back down to the floor. And with the hands on the floor, roll the hands over so that the back of the hand is on the floor once. The hand rolls over the fifth finger, the outside edge of the hand. And then roll the hand over the outside edge once more so that the palm comes to rest on the floor. And as you roll the hands over, you can feel that the movement is not just of the hand in the wrist. The movement is of the whole arm. The elbow is moving, even the upper arm is moving to facilitate the outward rolling and inward rolling of the hand. So how do you feel the two hands rolling differently, or do they roll the same? Do you feel that the front of the shoulder becomes more open, that you have more breadth from throat to the tip of the shoulder? And let that go, just rest a moment. And then move the hands so that the back of the hands come in contact with your flanks, with the sides of your body, and then you slide the backs of your hands up your flanks in the direction of the armpits so that the elbows go wide away from the body, and then slide the hands, the backs of the hands away, back down towards the hips. And once you can sense if the shoulders slide up towards the ears as the elbows come upwards, and once you can sense if the shoulders can broaden and sink down a little bit in order to permit at least the first half of the movement of the hands upwards and the wrists, the elbows wide. And then stay with the backs of the hands on the sides, about halfway up, somewhere it's comfortable, where the shoulders are not overly pushed towards the ears. Stay there with the hands in contact with the flanks and allow the shoulders just to gently glide towards the ears and away from the ears. And as the shoulders glide away from the ears, allow the elbows to become broader. The distance between the two elbow tips widens. You feel that your collarbones, the top of the chest, becomes broader as the shoulders lower. Let that go. Lengthen the arms, lengthen the legs. Roll the hands on the floor. Turn the hands so that once the palms are towards the ceiling, once the palms are towards the floor. And then bend the knees, stand the feet, bend the elbows. Allow the hands to hang. Soften the wrists, and then lay the hands on the lower belly, on the pelvis. And in this position, roll the hands over the outside edge, the fifth finger, so that the palms show towards the ceiling, and so that the palms turn towards the body. Allow the fingers to be relaxed, like a flower which has wilted. And then the next time you roll the hands, you will allow the elbows to come towards the body, which will push the hands, and you allow the hands to be pushed up past the belly button in the direction of the chest as they glide on the body. So allow the elbows to be wide, the hands rest on the pelvis. And then as the elbows glide and slide towards the body, the backs of the hands turn towards each other so that the fingertips slide past the belly button, up towards the chest, up towards the breastbone, as the elbows slide towards the body and just begin to come up onto the sides of the body. And then you slide the elbows back off the body onto the floor, the elbows slide wider, and the hands are pulled down the body until they rest once more on the lower belly or on the pelvis. And as you do so, allow the hands to turn in one direction, a rotation like before. You turn the hand over or roll the hand in one direction, and then you roll the hand in the other direction. And as the hands roll and move up over the belly button towards the chest, you allow the elbows to come towards the body, to travel up onto the body, so that the elbows come towards each other. Perhaps the elbows touch each other, perhaps the forearms touch each other as the hands, the backs of the hands move up in the direction of the chin. And then the elbows move away from each other as the hands which are in contact with the body slide on the chest and up the chest and down. And feel what happens in the shoulders. Do your shoulders pull forwards towards the breastbone? Do the shoulders widen? Do they move towards the hips or towards the ears? Leave that, rest the arms long. Once more, bring the hands to rest on the lower pelvis. And with one hand, turn the wrist, turn the forearm, and allow the elbow to slide towards the body just on one side, so that the one hand slides up the chest, so that the elbow comes up over to touch on the belly. And then leave that hand up by the throat somewhere. And move the shoulder without moving the hand stays up towards the throat. The shoulder moves forwards in the direction of the ceiling and returns. And feel as the one shoulder moves forwards, the other shoulder wants to sink towards the floor. You feel the shoulder blades has less contact with the floor on the one side. And then sink the hand back down the body, the elbow wide, leave the hands, and to the other side. Now the other hand turns over, slides up the chest, the elbow pushes it up, and then it stays there near the throat. And you lift the elbow away, the shoulder away from the floor. And feel how this movement of the one shoulder away from the floor permits the other shoulder to rest more fully on the floor. And your head has a tendency to move in one direction or the other. And let it go. Slide the arm down the body. Lengthen the legs, lengthen the arms. Feel the contact of the shoulders with the floor, the comparison with earlier. Feel their breadth. And gently, in comparison with earlier, roll your heads slowly, feeling where the movement rushes, where the movement sticks, where the movement flows. And whether the movement of your head can be felt in resonance further down in your spine. And let it go. Today's lesson was to do with the mobility and freeing up of the shoulders and integrating the movement of the shoulders with the neck, with the ribs, with the spine, so that the movement and load is more evenly distributed in the whole upper area. So you can roll to the side and come to standing. And then as you stand, feel or sense how does your head rest upon your spine? You have your spine, you have the axis, the atlas bones. How does your head rest like a ball on top of a stick, which is your spine. And how tall are you? How long are you now?
Thank you. That was really great.
You like that?
I do, because that's an area where I'm very weak and it's really mobilized.
You've noticed a change?
Yes, yeah. And I like because it's very gentle, but it's so clever. Yeah, I like that from an intellectual point of view, that you have to really think what it does and where it goes. Fantastic.